It doesn't matter if they're in public or private schools. Fewer than 1 in 10 early elementary school students in Milwaukee schools are meeting state reading goals. A new coalition has a plan to change that by focusing on giving teachers better reading instruction so they can help students read better. Joining us now is one of the co-chairs of the Milwaukee Reading Coalition. Dr. Howard Fuller is a longtime educator, former Milwaukee Public Schools superintendent, and the founder of the Howard Fuller Collegiate Academy. Thank you so much for joining us on Connect to MKE today to talk about this important issue.
Thanks so much for having me. You know, it's really good to be with you, of course. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you. Students in Milwaukee have struggled for years with low reading levels. How did we get here?
Yeah, so Denise, before I start answering the questions, I want to acknowledge a very sad thing that has happened. So, as you mentioned, we have formed the Milwaukee Reading Coalition, and there are really three chairs or tri-chairs, Joanne Anton, Mark Sane, and myself. And the sad thing is that a couple of days ago or yesterday, I'm not quite sure, we lost Mark. And it's a very sad occasion, not just for the Milwaukee Reading Commission, but for Milwaukee in general. Because as you know, I mean, Mark was a former chair of the board in Milwaukee Public Schools, former fireman, but he was just really a good man. And so I feel like our community lost a really good person. And what I want to do is to make sure we, let his family know that they're in our prayers and for the community to know that up until a couple of weeks ago, Mark was still working hard to try to make something happen for Milwaukee's children. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, before we get started.
Well,
So,
thank you for sharing that, Dr. Fuller. He was just a remarkable person who gave and gave and gave so much to this community. And
right,
we're fortunate that that's something that he wanted to be able to do.
right. Yeah, so to get to your question, Denise, first of all, this problem has been with us for decades. And while it is a problem in general, it has been a particular problem for Black students. And so, for example, on the National Assessment of Education Progress tests, I've gone back, I'd say at least 2 decades to look at the scores. And for at least 2 decades, Black students in the city have been at or on the bottom when it comes to NAEP scores. And so the reality of it is, as you know, this is not a new issue. But what has been missing is a real community commitment to change it. And one of the instruments that's important at this particular moment in time is Act 20. And so what I want to try to make sure we do today is I want to make sure people understand, A, what the Milwaukee Reading Coalition is, what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and how Act 20 is connected to our efforts. So again, the direct answer to your question is we've gotten here because we have not equipped our teachers and educators with the skill sets that they need to teach reading. And honestly, Denise, when we were in MPS together, I remember particularly older Black teachers trying to explain to me way back then that we were not teaching our kids how to read. But as you may remember, we were involved in the algebra wars at that time. And so the focus was on trying to make sure that all ninth graders took algebra. And so I didn't really first understand the reading issue as I do today. And we didn't take it up and didn't get involved in what they call the reading wars because we were focused on the algebra wars, I guess. And so this has been with us for a very long time. And I just hope that finally we have a broad community commitment to not letting it continue.
There are 86 different schools and organizations that are part of the coalition, and it's got this singular focus on working to make sure that teachers are trained to
Right,
teach reading. Is
right.
that are those two of the things that really makes this different? There is some broader community buy-in to it, and it has a focus. There's no discussion on whether this way or that way is the best way to teach people to read. It's focused on teaching teachers how to help kids read.
Yeah, I think we have to be honest and say that there are still people in our community, teachers and others, who don't believe in this particular approach to teaching reading. So we shouldn't act like we have total unity on what to do because we don't. And there are still, unfortunately, those of us who are continuing the 30-year-old war between private schools, charter schools, traditional MPS schools. So everybody just needs to be clear that all of those issues have not gone away and is still problematic for what it is that we're trying to do. So what I want to do, if it's okay with you, is step back and explain fairly in fair detail what the theory of change is of the Milwaukee Reading Coalition so that we're all clear.
Please.
So the first theory that we had is that we needed to build a broad base of support to try to get this done. So when you mentioned that there are now 86 organizations or 96 and over 150 individuals that have signed on to be a part of the Milwaukee Reading Coalition. And with the support of the mayor, with the support of the superintendent, with the support of, GMF, particularly Greg, the Greater Milwaukee Committee, the MMAC, we've got parents, so that broad base of support has been built. The second part of our theory of change was we have to operationalize Act 20. So Act 20 was a law that was passed in July of 23 that said we have to move towards using a science of reading approach to teaching reading, and that issues like 3Qing and what people call balanced literacy, all of those methods of teaching reading, it is against the state law to actually use any of those techniques to teach reading in our state. And the focus of Act 20 was on 5-year-old kindergarten through third grade, recognizing that we have reading problems that go beyond those grade levels. But the focus of Act 20 is 5-year-old kindergarten through third grade. So what we wanted to do in Milwaukee by creating the Milwaukee Reading Coalition was to build that broad base of support so that we could take advantage of Act 20. The third part of our theory of change was we wanted to be able to pool private money and public money so that we could create a larger resource base to support our efforts in Milwaukee. And the efforts in Milwaukee, as you laid out, is this. The Milwaukee Reading Coalition has brought into existence the Milwaukee Reading Commission. And so you have a coalition that has created the Milwaukee Reading Commission. The Milwaukee Reading Commission has a very focused agenda. What we want to do is to raise public and private money, use that money to support the professional development of teachers in the science of reading. And we want to do that by paying for the fees for the training, by paying for the materials that are needed for the training, and to give each person who finishes a $1,500 stipend. And the reason why I say each person, because we have a school-based strategy that says if you come to the Milwaukee Reading Commission for support, you have to come as a school. And 90% of the teachers in that school have to sign on to go through the training. The principals have to be trained, the assistant principals, any instructional coaches, so that the entire staff that has anything to do with teaching reading has to be involved in the training. And in order to get the stipend, you have to complete the training with fidelity. And what that means, Denise, is that, for example, if you use letters, which I'm very familiar with, that requires about 160 hours.
Okay.
So it requires a significant amount of time. So we would give stipends to people who complete the 160 hours. So that's kind of the theory of it. And it's all buttressed on something that you mentioned when you started, that this is not an MPS problem. This is a citywide problem. It's a problem in private schools, it's a problem in charter schools, and it's a problem in traditional MPS schools. So we have a citywide strategy.
How hopeful are you that enough schools, enough teachers, principals will agree to take part in this, that there can be critical mass that begins to change the outcomes for students?
Honestly, Denise, it depends on what day you ask me. I mean, there's some days that I'm, hopeful. Other days, honestly, not so much. But I need to explain what I mean by that. First of all, this only works if we're able to, number one, pool all of the money. So let me explain how the money is set up so that people understand that. So when Act 20 was passed in July of 23, the state put $50 million in there, which really is not a lot of money statewide. For example, Tennessee put 100 million in, just so you can get a contrast. But what happened is the governor vetoed the $50 million. And so for almost 2 years, or maybe it was over 2 years, that was before the Supreme Court, because when the governor vetoed the money, the legislature sued him. And so ultimately, before the budget was passed, the Supreme Court ruled that the governor had overstepped his bounds. And so once that happened, joint finance released 9 million to DPI to hire 64 coaches, which is a part of Act 20. And then they took the remaining 39 million or so and set it up in two pots. One pot of money is for districts or schools that purchase the curriculum. So everybody understands letters, for example, is not a curriculum. It's a way of teaching teachers how to teach reading. You have to have a curriculum that is aligned with the science of reading. And so what the state said was, for all districts and schools that purchase a curriculum that's aligned, we will give you 50% reimbursement. So one pot of money is for that. The pot of money that we're looking at is the pot of money that was set aside for professional development. And DPI has not said yet how much of that money is in that pot. But whatever the amount of money is, it's for the entire state, not just for Milwaukee. And what we're asking DPI to do is, for the professional development money, instead of giving it individually to schools or to MPS, give it to the Milwaukee Reading Commission, so we can then take that money and combine it with private money that we're raising to be able to support the schools that will come to us for support.
And of course, the whole idea behind this is that by adults working together to get this done,
Right.
young people benefit.
Yes. And then part of it, Denise, honestly, is trying to end the 30-year-old war, between the various sectors. And maybe if we could do this together, maybe there's some other things that we could do together to help Milwaukee's children. But again, the jury is still out on whether or not that's going to happen. So everyone is clear, because DPI has not yet made a decision on how the money is going to come to Milwaukee. They've not made the decision on how much money, And how is it going to come? Are they going to send it to the Milwaukee Reading Commission, which would allow for this unified strategy? Or will they say, well, that's interesting, but we're going to send the money individually? And if that happens, it'll make what we're trying to do really much, much more difficult, if not impossible to do.
But for the first time, perhaps there is hope with everyone working together that we can make a difference. Dr.
Yeah,
Howard Fuller.
perhaps.
Yeah.
You would hope, that we would put institutional prerogatives aside and say the most important thing really are these children, and that with this kind of broad-based support, if we can make this happen, as I said, then what are the other things that we could make happen in this city for our kids?
Hope and opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you for leading this effort, Dr. Fuller, and for being here with us today.
Thanks so much, Denise. I really appreciate it.
Keep us up to date on how it's going.
We'll do that.
Thanks for being with us. That's it for this week. Be well, take care, and we'll see you again next week.